I'm Matthew Burbidge here at the ITWeb Security Summit, and I'm here with Len No today, who is an evangelist for CyberArk. Welcome, Len.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've been looking forward to this interview ever since I heard I was going to be speaking to you. Before we get into your story, what does CyberArk do?
We are an identity security company. We've been around for a long, long time. We were actually the first company that actually invented the privileged access management space. We based our entire company around privilege and locking down all privilege, and we can do that for human identities, machine identities, APIs. You know, honestly, I consider us to be the gold standard of privilege and identity. I'm sure other people would have different opinions, but you know, going from being a client of CyberArk at one point to the point where I actually joined the organization, I believe in our product, and I think we've done major, benefits to the security industry as a whole.
All right, so I mean, obviously, identity management's a very hot topic, and as you say, and I suppose with the proliferation of on-prem, off-prem, private, hybrid, multi-cloud, it's getting more complicated all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry now for going on 30 years. I've done every job you could imagine, from a programmer, app designer, system administrator, system architect. And I miss those good old days of one operating system to one box.
Yeah.
But the concepts of cloud, hybrid environments, we have expanded the attack surface so large, and we've had so many tools out there. Trying to actually get good, reliable data becomes the actual challenge. I mean, every vendor out there has a product that says, I'm going to solve your problems. But with all of that kind of noise, how do you actually find usable, marketable data that you can actually take action against? So I do think it's going to get a lot worse. And in some ways, I wonder if we're going to wind up in the same cyclical cycle that we have with technology over the years. I mean, if you remember, originally it was one OS to a box. Then we went to VMs,
yes.
And then from there we went to blades. And then we went to the cloud. Then there was the push to get back to on-prem, and now it's gone to hybrid. So, I don't know where it's going to go, but I do think that the security aspect is not being given enough priority or attention, and regardless of what your architecture is.
So on that, I mean, I suppose the technology is only half the battle, because, I mean, if you've got a company, financial services, say a couple of thousand people in that office, you're going to have to convince them to use the PAM solution that you're selling, okay? And I mean, is it something like, if I'm a developer and I need to log on to work on a server, do you send me a token which is only valid for that period of time, that's linked to my identity? Is that where I'm on the right track?
We do have that kind of functionality, just-in-time access, where the users will actually sit with no privilege at all. We have a web interface that you can actually authenticate.
So you go from no one's got any privileges. Is that least privilege? Is that what?
That is basically what we try to actually force, is a true least privilege. We have different models that we can actually use with step-up authentication, just-in-time access. The CyberArk portfolio as a whole, we have everything covered, from remote users with a VPN-less solution that ties directly into our digital vault. We have an identity component for single sign-on and adaptive multi-factor. We have a tool to remove hard-coded APIs from runbooks and playbooks for DevOps. The one thing that CyberArk, in my opinion, in my tenure here, that has really been the difference between us and a lot of our competitors, is we have stuck on the privilege idea. We really have never gone off of that. So, because the way I look at it, and I'm not speaking for CyberArk, but this is my interpretation, if you're a user with no privilege, then what real threat are you?
Sure, exactly. Yeah. So you're quite a special person, and I want to just get to that in a moment. But what's your background?
I was a black hat for a very, very long time. I spent the better part of my youth riding around in motorcycle groups in the States and did a lot of things that I won't be talking about. And there came a point in my life where I started to have grandchildren, and I really had to take a look at, what I was doing. And when I really evaluated it, the only thing I was really good at was computers. And like I said, I had been doing, standard, normal IT kind of jobs, but the offensive side of security, or at that point, just the offensive side of technology it's always been a lure to me. My father was one of those types of people who always had to have the latest toys. So I had a TRS-80, I had a Tandy, I had a Commodore 64, a 128. Okay. I even had a set-top computer called an Odyssey. So I have been around through every iteration of computer technology, and I've been a part of it. So I think that's one of the things that's really helped me with the idea of, I don't like to use the word hacking because it has such a negative connotation. Yeah. I would prefer to use the term exploring, maybe without permission.
Okay.
But no, my history in the tech field in general and my availability to access that kind of things at a young age, I think was very, instrumental in my abilities to do a lot of the things that I do today.
So, tell us about your bio implants.
I currently have 10
okay.
microchips implanted in my body between my elbows and my fingers on my left and right arms.
Okay.
I have the ability to interface with NFC, RFID. This rather large implant that you see here in the fore part of my hand, this is a combination RFID NFC chip. Okay. This one here in my wrist is an EM3000 RFID. This one is a MyFair Classic. This one is actually a credit card, so I can actually tap to pay with my hand like you would with a credit card or a cell phone. Okay. I have magnets in my fingers, and a lot of people think it's just a party trick, but these are very specific magnets. They're called biosensing magnets, okay. And it actually allows me to feel electromagnetic fields and currents. So if I'm on the outside of your building, I can literally trace your electrical circuits by running my hands over your walls. And I actually have a cryptobionic identity chip in my forearm that is AES encrypted, and it's used to do OTP, SHA-1, hash generation, PGP, BIP32 wallet identity for my crypto wallet. And if I had a Tesla, I could actually even put my Tesla key on there and drive my car without having to worry about having my fob.
So, so you got to get a doctor to surgery?
Nope, I have never seen a doctor once.
So who puts them in?
I use body modification parlors, the same kind of people who would gauge your ears or put a ring in your nose or split your tongue. Okay. So I actually deal with one place specifically. It's called Shaman Modification out of Austin, Texas.
Okay. I mean, why? I mean, because you can have it. I mean, why are you doing this?
Why? Because I am the attack vector.
Okay.
Let me give you a couple of quick use cases. So most people would actually be very familiar with the idea of a badging system to get into a physical location. Yeah. This microchip right here is a MyFair Classic. Okay. With the magic bit, so it's rewritable, but it also can emulate up to, I think it's 98 different access protocols, including Pyramid, Prox, Indala, Diamond. So if I use a Proxmark or a Flipper or some type of utility to scrape the data off of your badge, I can then write it down to one of my implants, compromise your physical security with zero indications of compromise. So let me give you a scenario. Let's say you just happen to discover me in your server. Well, let's play this out. The first thing that you're probably going to do is, what are you doing here? Well, the door was open. I've seen server racks on TV. I thought it was cool. I didn't know this was restricted. Well, you need to come with us. We need to call the authorities. Okay, well, I'm sorry. The authorities could then show up.
There's nothing on you.
There is nothing on me, and beyond that, due to health and privacy laws,
Yeah.
they're not even allowed to ask me if they see the bulge in my hand what it is without some type of a court intervention.
Yeah.
And the large implant on the back of my hand is mostly antenna. And this I use if you're using a mobile device with NFC enabled, and I can social engineer you to hand me your phone. I can install a Trojan application on your phone. I can redirect you through a URL redirection to a website that's infected with the browser exploit extension framework, hook your browser in Java, and I'm already in your device before I even hand it back to you.
Are you used in any kind of pen testing situations? Or?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Have you got any information out of anyone at the summit, or?
Well, due to confidentiality reasons,
you wouldn't be able to tell me.
I can neither confirm nor deny that question.
That's a you. All right.
But I can tell you this: I know of quite a few other individuals back in the States with these same capabilities that do work on red teams.
That do? Why
they do?
Okay.
I can also tell you that I've actually gotten to know the CEOs of the two main distributors of consumer grade implants, and there's an estimated 600,000 implants that have been sold globally. Now, that does not mean that there are 600,000 people out there that are using these chips for the same purposes that I am.
Sure.
Most of the time, they would be used to replace, like I said, replace a badge or maybe a gym fob or something like that.
Yeah.
They use them for legitimate, normal purposes. But, I mean, if you look at Mimikatz, which is one of the most well-known tools for compromising Kerberos, it's not a hacker's tool.
Sure.
It's a Kerberos auditing tool. So I essentially did the exact same thing with the implants by saying, this functionality is available. I know it can be used as an attack vector. Nobody's done it yet. Why not?
Yeah.
So to answer at a very high level your question of why, because it gives me the ability to do what a lot of other pen testers or red teamers can't. If I get caught, the worst you're going to be able to do is trespass me off of a property.
Sure.
If you get caught with a clone card or a Proxmark or some tool, you're going to jail.
Do you like science fiction?
I love science fiction.
Yeah, I know. It's one of my favorite.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I can't get enough of it. Yeah.
You know, I think the funny thing that the joke that everybody keeps making to me now, the big thing is, all the AI chatbots. Well, I figure all of you guys are all in trouble. Me, I'm Renfield. I'm already part computer, so I'm going to be the one emptying the boot drives for ChatGPT in the future.
And these things, the implants last for like as long as they last forever.
Pretty much.
Okay.
The tags themselves are passive, so they don't have any internal power.
Okay.
Just like any RFC or NFID, I said that backwards, RFID or NFC tag, the field that's put out by the receiver is actually what energizes the chips. So for the most part, they just lay dormant unless I come in contact.
And do you get any trouble at the airport?
They have never caught me or found me. And to my point that I made earlier, even if they notice something, they're not allowed to ask.
But I mean, those scanners in the US, I mean, they can, I don't know if they're X-rays, but they can, I mean, will they not set it off?
No.
Not they won't.
Well, if you think about it, most chips are made of silicon. They're not made of metal.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to the actual metal in my body, it's the very fine copper wire, and the magnet in my pinky has an iron core wrapped in titanium. But let's think about it. When you walk through a metal detector in the airport, as a gentleman, we may have a large necklace on and it doesn't go off. If you're a female, maybe you have large earrings and it doesn't go off. They're not set that sensitive.
Okay.
And realistically, if you're doing the X-ray where you're holding your hands up,
yeah,
the TSA or the security agents, they can see your arms. They don't really look at them. They're looking more at the torso and the buttocks area to see if you have anything strapped to it. So no, honestly, they're not sensitive enough to actually detect me. And when it comes to detection, that's one of the big points that I've tried to stress, is there is absolutely no way to detect me. If you look at the way NFC and wireless protocols actually work, they react to specific radio frequencies. So if you wanted to detect an augmented human coming into your organization, you would need basically the same kind of archway that you would for a magnetometer, but it would need to be a multi-frequency spectrum analyzer, and then you would have to have the ability to listen on every single frequency for any type of response. It's not sustainable. The one thing that I do find very, very interesting, and this is something, if you'd like, I'd be happy to follow up with you on. In the United States, we've actually adopted a new type of canine into the law enforcement. So, most people are familiar with drug-sniffing dogs. Well, now they have a new dog that's actually been trained to look for a specific compound used in circuitry creation called triphenylphosphine oxide. And these dogs are used in human trafficking cases where someone may have been arrested, and they'll run the dogs around their house looking for hard drives or thumb drives that may contain evidence. So I've reached out to one of the local jurisdictions that have one of these, and we are actually trying to set up an opportunity for me to go and see if this dog may be able to smell the circuitry from within inside my body, because that may be the only potential way to actually detect someone without truly invasive x-rays.
Yeah. There are so many vectors, attack vectors, and most businesses don't even see, a tiny percent of them are available to and it's just, let me ask you this. What do you think, specifically with your work with CyberArk? Cyber is often seen as like a roadblock in the way of doing your job. And most people will say that they'll happily circumvent any kind of security control if it just is less hassle. How do you get that balance right, do you think?
By force.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately, like I said, I've been in this industry for a very, very long time. And I agree with your statement 100%. If there is, and I've said it in a lot of my talks, if there is a control that will inhibit performance, people will try to work around it. So I think at that point, it comes back on the onus of the companies to basically enforce software policies regardless, through application control, logistical access, privilege control. Don't allow unknown applications from the internet to be installed. Verify your installation through approved sources, verify it by certificate, publisher, and lock the systems down. As much as this may sound harsh to the employee, but at the end of the day, that's what you are. You're an employee of the company.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if you want to, load software and you want to play Minecraft, go do that on your system at home, not on your corporate assets.
Yeah. So, what would you? If you were in charge of the cyber program for the United States government, what would you?
What would I do first? I would resign.
No. They've got. I heard they've got around 1.5 million people who have access to those, particularly. That kid who was caught the other day.
Yep.
And how did that happen?
I don't know all of the particulars. The one thing I will say is, at some point there was either overprivilege, or from the human aspect, there wasn't enough done to vet that person prior to giving them access to that. I'm not going to speak to that because I don't know it, but from the 1,000-foot view, those would be my two thoughts of how this came about.
He was an IT guy, so he was going to be looking over the shoulder. He was going to have access to it anyway. How do you get around that? Because it's he's the guy that's meant to be fixing the stuff, and he was, posting in a games chat room.
I guess that is where more stringent background checks,
continuous background
checks. Yeah. Almost a zero trust policy for anyone with that type of access to that type of information. There should be a constant check of, What is your mental state? You know, are you still in compliance with the job description and responsibilities? But like you said, the U.S. government, and I'm not going to limit that to the U.S. government, I'm going to just say governments in general.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of data and employees, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the million tools. I can have all the tools in the world, I can have all the information in the world I want, but if I can't get it into a concise, you know, actionable format, it doesn't matter.
Can you just explain to me the difference between zero trust and privileged access management? Is it like a subset of one or the other? Or?
Zero trust, in my opinion, is a philosophy, whereas privileged access management is kind of a step towards it. Zero trust, there are multiple different definitions, but I think the easiest one to digest would just be constantly trust but verify.
Okay.
Privileged access management basically says, we don't trust you with these privileges all the time. You should only use them when you need them. So it kind of works hand in hand with the zero trust philosophy, but I find that people who actually try to implement a zero trust environment inherently are going to run into a lot of difficulty, especially if it's not something that's being stood up for the very first time. Trying to retrofit technology into a zero trust becomes very difficult because you have, you know, already acquired tools, and it may not fit in with the workflows for that. But I think zero trust and just the concepts of continuous validation for any type of privilege is something to be sought after, more of a destination or a journey than a destination.
Yeah.
And I feel that there are a lot of things that can be done to kind of go down that road, and privileged access management is just one. You know, single sign-on, just-in-time access, adaptive multi-factor. I think all of it plays into it in some way or another.
In your view, do companies like start using you and then, like as you said, the journey, they get part way and then they kind of take their foot off the gas, or they get like they kind of half do it, but then is it that last 5% that's the most difficult, or is it like what do most of your customers' journeys look like?
I wouldn't say so for our customers. We have an amazing customer success team and support staff, so we actually at CyberArk will work with those customers. We have our, you know, a very prescriptive plan for startups, what we call our sprints. We take care of the big targets first, you know, and depending on whether we're dealing endpoint level, server level, privileged access management, identity solution, you know, we work hand in hand with our prospects and customers so that last 5% of fatigue, we really don't see that as much as I feel other companies might.
And just finally, there's been a whole lot of talk at this summit about AI, and as Mikko Iponen said yesterday, you know, this is the hottest AI summer that we've seen ever. And I mean, him and another speaker they were saying, you know, the deep fake voice, deep fake images. What's your view on that?
I did a talk not too long ago, and it was called Prove You Are You in a Zero Trust World. And honestly, when I basically broke down that whole concept, you know, we as individuals, there's not a single unique thing about us anymore that can't be compromised, duplicated, or bypassed. You know, so the idea that AI and deep fakes, this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest threats that we have right now.
Yeah.
You know, and due to the fact that everybody's so focused on the AI, I feel that we need to be looking more at the fraud prevention side of AI as much as we're looking at the possibilities of what it can do for us. You know, there's all kinds of new scams, and you know, I know a couple of people who have personally fallen victims to some of the voice deepfakes. You know, I know some older, you know, people in my life that were actually called where one of their nephew's voices was actually spoofed. They were told that, you know, he was in an accident, and they wound up giving up credit card information to scammers. If you look at, you know, facial ID, you know, for access to mobile devices, I can deep fake you.
Yeah.
So how does that actually work as an authentication method? You know, that's the stuff that I think we need to look at. I mean, we know for a fact that when it comes to deep fakes, there are some challenges that it has. For example, most deep fakes don't blink.
Yeah, or there's something wrong with the eyes.
Yes.
They could blink, but it's just like
the eyes are wrong.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about, we're finding new drug cures, we're writing new security software, it's recoding our old applications in a much more efficient way. But nobody's ever really spending the time to look at what can we do to make sure that what we're seeing is what it is. And I said this in my talk, and since you gave me the floor, I'm going to say it, because it's a question, but I think it needs to be asked. We won't go to a website without the little SSL lock.
Yeah.
What do we do when it comes to video chats?
Yeah.
I've wondered for a while, are we going to need to something like IVAS or identity validation as a service? I don't know if it's going to be a PKI thing, but some way, that I can, if I reached out to you over some type of digital format that says, I am Len and you are you, so that way we know who we are. In the States, every politician, regardless of their party, at the end of their announcements on their commercials and their advertisements is, hi, I'm so-and-so and I approve this message.
Yeah.
Well, how do I know that's you anymore?
Yeah.
And then, one last thing, if we're talking about this that I want to throw out just to get your thoughts on. Are you familiar with the Bruce Willis deep cake fiasco that happened last year?
No.
A Russian ad agency called Deep Cake actually used the likeness of Bruce Willis as John McClane from Die Hard in a commercial for a Russian telecom. Then Deep Cake actually came out and said that Bruce Willis had licensed Deep Cake to use his likeness moving forward. And it was so big that the agent actually had to come out and speak out in the US media and say, this is not true. But it made me start thinking, if we're at a point where we can market our identities outside of our physical beings, where does the legal and the liability come in terms of actions of someone that may be representing me that isn't me? And if you take that one step farther, there was recently an online influencer who decided to take all of her her media content, worked with an AI company, and had offered a virtual girlfriend based on all of her content at $1 a minute. So I think we're starting to move beyond, the physical forms that we're in, and the concepts of identity become even more challenging and more vital, because at this point, now that we can do this, anybody can be anybody at any time. And if I start trying to look like your CISO or your CISO, how do we validate that? And that's what we need to, those are, in my opinion, the questions we need to start asking, because those are the tools that we need in the future.
I mean, some people talk about some kind of blockchain thing. I've heard of that.
But that's not practical.
Sure.
We need something that is practical and resources as well as energy and cost.
Yeah.
And then the question comes, if we were to try and find something like an IVAS, who would run it? Would it be governmental? Would it be global? How is it that would my validation in the US work for you down here in South Africa? Would there need to be joints between the two countries for cross traffic? And then who would govern that?
Yeah.
We're running down a road that we don't know where it goes, and we don't know where the exits are.
Well, except it reminds me of a Black Mirror. Len, it's been a great pleasure chatting to you.
I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.